getting another frontline starter and getting a back end bullpen piece for what you're going to have to pay Juan Soto to come to LA. Dogs are very misrepresented. They're very misunderstood. Pit bulls are actually a wonderful breed. It's not the breed, it's the owner. My dad was a Yankee fan. I grew up in Colorado. We didn't have Major League Baseball until 1993. So I kind of grew up a Yankee fan. I mean, a very casual Yankee fan. But we paid for all of that. And unfortunately, one stray dog, this is what happens when you don't spay and neuter your animals. One stray dog cost us $25,000 because it was all of the medical, all of the spay, all of the neuter. That's what we do. We raise money to pay for the medical, transportation fees, foster supplies, microchips, vaccinations, all of the things to get the dogs off the street, out of the shelter, healthy, happy, and into forever homes.
Episode 99 of Stay Classy podcast. Here we go. I can't believe we're 1 week away from 100 now. We've been doing this for over 2 years, and today is one of the most exciting days of my life. Alanna Rizzo, who I've watched on MLB Network and on television for years, is coming on the podcast today, and we're here to talk Dodgers. Thanks so much for coming on, Alanna. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm so good. Great to be with you. Congratulations on the 98 previous episodes. You guys are rolling. Happy to be with you.
Thank you. No, we're really excited. I reached out to Alanna, I think a few weeks ago, and just ecstatic after the Dodgers 2024 World Series victory. And I was like, I have to find an excuse to bring Dodgers onto the show. And so I reached out to Alanna, not sure if I'd get a response. She responded, was very gracious enough to come onto the show. So we're really excited to do this. And we're going to talk baseball. We're also going to talk a bit about a foundation that Alanna is extremely passionate about. And it's a cause also near and dear to my heart, which is assisting dogs in need of rescue. So we're going to talk a little about the Guidry's Guardian Foundation. And first of all, just to give Alanna a proper introduction, for those of you who don't know, Alanna is a 7-time Emmy Award winner. She is a seasoned sports journalist, over 20 years experience. She's been a long-time contributor on MLB Network. She's been on Spectrum SportsNet LA, all over the place, covering Dodgers, interviewing the players, the coaches, all across baseball. Now, as we get into the questions today, just basically like the first thing I wanted to talk about is just looking back at 2024 and the season that was for LA. Like, I mean, there's a lot of like speculation about like what it was, the secret ingredient that helped them get over the top with all the postseason failures of the last like 12 seasons since I was a little kid, like just nightmare after nightmare, like heartbreak after heartbreak, like just every year, like this being the year. And then it just comes crashing down in the most impossible of ways. Like, what do you feel like made the character of this Dodgers team so different from the other very talented squads of the past? I mean, I would argue that the 2017, 2022 teams were as, or if not more talented, but overcoming like all the injuries, like with the season seemingly over in effect after the Glasnow and Stone injuries, like what made this team's like character so different? Was it kind of the Kike, like we don't give a fuck attitude, or was it like something else? Like, what do you think it was like as far as the depth and resilience of this team that pushed them over the top?
I think the biggest thing, first of all, is I would have to say that out of the tenure of Dave Roberts, this is the best year he's had as far as a managerial career is concerned. I mean, he managed his butt off, particularly in the postseason. There may have been some games throughout the year that were a little lopsided, and you kind of forego those games just knowing what you're trying to do, and that is get into the postseason and not only get into it, but get it out of the first round. And I think if you talk to Dave and you've heard him on other interviews, you know that he was, the most difficult team to get past this season in the postseason was the San Diego Padres. And I even said that once they beat the Padres, and I didn't give him a lot of credit in that series, I have to say, the Dodgers. I really thought perhaps it was going to be the Padres in 5. And as much as I hate to admit that just kind of felt the way that it was going to go. But thankfully I was wrong. Love being wrong about that. But Dave did a great job managing this season with the amount of injuries to a decimated pitching staff. And I think it was because these guys really played for one another. Max Muncy came on my podcast, Dodgers Territory, and just also talked about it on Foul Territory, that this is a team of guys that they said, listen, we just have to give each other, talking about the postseason, we just have to give each other 3 weeks. I mean, they had separate planes just for the guys, families weren't on the plane. They had their own planes. And they just really wanted to be dedicated to one another and finish what they started. And this team has always had talent, obviously, with that payroll and what the front office does. But this is a team that really wanted to play for each other. So kudos to Dave for the managerial experience, and kudos also to the guys for really putting each other first instead of, being selfish.
Yeah, no, I love what you said about the Padres, just like overcoming the Padres, and then also the Muncy interview, because I also am thinking about like the Muncy like drunken interview after the NLCS with Brent Honeywell, and like when they're going off about like just kind of the resiliency and what made this team different, like in terms of just the chemistry, right? And they were talking about like as you said, the fact that they spent more time together in the bye week before the playoffs, like spending time together, and how crucial that was just for like the bonding. And people kind of laugh at that, like, oh, like what does that really mean? Like they have to come out and play, but I think that does really make a difference, right? When it's not a bunch of talented players playing for themselves, but when there's that core like chemistry, and you saw it in Game 5 of the World Series, when you saw like those quality like team at bats where it was not swinging for the fences, but just putting the ball in play to get a run home. But with the Padres series, that's really interesting, Alanna, because I was thinking the same thing, and I'm going to be very honest. Like I didn't think they were going to make it out of that series alive I would say after like game 3, and not because I didn't think they were capable of it, but because I had 2022 vibes all over again. It was, they're going into San Diego tied 1-1, and that is a hard place to play. I mean, the Dodgers in a podcast recently, I can't remember who it was, said that that's like basically the hardest place to play in. I think it was Kike. And it was just like, it seemed like the odds were stacked against them. It seemed like the Padres honestly were playing better baseball at that point. And then inexplicably, they failed to score for 24 innings, as we know, and the rest is history. But yeah, I think that was the biggest test. I think Mookie Betts and Dave Roberts were both very clear about that on Mookie's podcast recently, where it was like basically like that was like their litmus test for, are we different than like the teams that came before us in the past like postseason runs. But I guess like for when they were backs were to the wall in the NLDS, like down 2-1, with 2022 kind of like, and 2023 looming, like just the narrative was already writing itself, right? Another postseason choke. And what do you think like changed? Like, was it in that, like going into that Game 4 and then that Game 5, do you think that the team was, as Mookie said, just kind of like looser and more relaxed, and that kind of like changed? Or do you think that it was like just the Padres collapsing, like plain and simple? Or what do you think happened there?
I think a lot of it was, this is a team in the Dodgers that was sick and tired of getting bounced out of the first round. And they have an unbelievable amount of talent. And so do the Padres, obviously. I thought the talent as far as the starting pitching staff was incredible for the Padres, probably deeper, of course, just because of injury than the Dodgers had. But this was a team that was hell-bent on not losing. And once they got, I knew it, and I even said this too. I said, once they got out of the Padres series, they get out of the NLDS, I said, they're going to the World Series. No disrespect to the Mets, but I was like, there is no way that if they beat the Padres that they're going to lose to the Mets. I just felt that way. And they proved me right. And I'm grateful to that. I think this is just a team that really has had so much postseason experience that every year, if you don't, it's not one thing. They know that they're going to go to the postseason, but you better go to the World Series. And to be able to do it with the amount of injuries that they had. And injuries are not just, wasn't just a Dodgers issue. It's a league-wide issue, obviously. But the way that they handled situations, the way guys stepped up, you heard what Max Muncy said about Brett Honeywell. If Brett Honeywell didn't pitch the way that he did, the Dodgers wouldn't have won that series. And, it's giving a lot of guys that probably shouldn't have been up in the big leagues an opportunity to perform, and they took advantage of it. I mean, there's a lot of guys that had big league debuts that are pitching in positions and spots that they shouldn't be, and they're not ready for. But I mean, injuries and necessity dictate that. And they were able to figure it out, find a way, and then put guys in great situations. And thankfully, this is a Dodgers team that has a lineup of the ages. So, and they play fundamental baseball. Let's not forget what happened in that 5th inning of the World Series in Game 5. You think about the fact that if the Yankees would have, if Anthony Rizzo and Garrett Cole would have covered first base, maybe that doesn't happen. Maybe Mookie running out of the box, out of his mind doesn't happen. He seized an opportunity. Anthony Rizzo's not covering first. That's a little league play. That's baseball 101. And then it just unraveled from there. And even when the Yankees came back in Game 5 and took the lead again, I still felt like the Dodgers were going to win it. And there was no way in the world, after taking a 3-0 advantage, there was no way in the world the Dodgers were going to lose 4 in a row. So I felt even when the Yankees won Game 4, I still felt very confident that the Dodgers would figure it out.
Yeah, I completely agree with that assessment, especially with like the Game 5. And honestly, I did think after they were down 5-0, I did think the series was probably headed back to LA, which I was very confident about with the Yamamoto-Rodon matchup. And I think in LA, like the Dodgers win that game. But even aside from that, just in the 5th inning, like of that game. As you said, it's about the fundamentals. And as much as people focus on the Yankees' mistakes, and rightfully so, because that's inexcusable for, Cole not to cover first, for Judge to look away, drop the ball. But at the same time, it's like if the Dodgers aren't running those plays out, if they aren't hustling, like none of that even happens. If they just treat it as it's over before it's finished. And I just think that there's something, beyond baseball about that, right? About the work ethic that goes into that. But as far as, so I think it was on foul territory a couple months ago, or I should say a few weeks ago. You said about the championship, about the full season championship, you said, and I quote, "You can take that asterisk and send it to the freaking moon." Love that quote. Love that line. I've been repeating it very sassily to all my San Diego friends down here in San Diego. But it's a huge monkey off their backs, right? And I was at the parade a couple weeks later, or I should say a few days after the championship in LA, and you could just kind of sense like the relief, right? And the relief and the elation and just the ecstasy of the fans and of the city. And I know you might say this about any city after winning World Series, but I really do think it meant a lot. Like I was in LA during COVID 2020 when I was living there after graduating from UCLA. And I just remember the feeling of elation and the city really kind of needing that moment, and the Lakers winning too, and just what it meant. And with Fernando Valenzuela passing a few days before the World Series and it being his 64th birthday, I believe, on the day of the parade, if I'm not mistaken, like the atmosphere was just ecstatic. So I just love like what this means to the city and to Dodgers fans. But looking forward, like looking ahead, like, there's a lot of offseason questions and priorities for LA. Now, I want to ask you, like, as far as the whole, like, and I think there were some updates about Soto the last couple of days, if I'm not mistaken, although he hasn't been signed yet. So as far as like the whole debate, like re-signing Teoscar Hernandez in right field or going after Soto, the majority of fans I know for a fact are in favor of, keeping Teo. From a front office standpoint, from a managerial standpoint, from an analytics standpoint, maybe it looks a little different, but do you think that there's something to this idea of like keeping the squad the way it was, keeping the team chemistry, or do you think that's just like kind of all semantics, emotion, and they need to go after Soto? Like, what's your take on that debate?
Enjoying this episode? Subscribe for more content on finding your own path to success. Every subscriber makes a huge difference to the pod, and we're grateful for everyone. And don't forget to throw us a classy like and comment too to let YouTube know that you're a fan of our stuff. Now back to your regularly scheduled podcasting.
I am not a I want Soto fan. I think Soto's an unbelievable player. I just think that he's not worth the price tag that he's going to demand. And no disrespect to Soto. I think he's a guy that obviously is an unbelievably talented player. He's a superstar. He has one of the best swings I've ever seen in the game. But I do think he's a defensive liability. And I think with the amount that he is going to warrant, I don't see it being a sensible decision to sign Juan Soto when you could get Teoscar Hernandez back in right field, who obviously, wants to come back to Los Angeles. I'm not saying Teoscar Hernandez is Juan Soto, but I think Teoscar Hernandez for that price tag is very worth Hernandez getting another frontline starter and getting a back end of the bullpen piece for what you're going to have to pay Juan Soto to come to LA. And we already have a DH. We already have a guy that, is a good bat in right field, but yeah. I want to be able to get more pieces that make sense than just a $600 million price tag or whatever it is that Juan Soto is going to get. Again, like the guy, no disrespect to him. I just think the Dodgers can do more with that amount of money that's going to be spent on Juan Soto. I would love to see Teoscar back. I would love to see Blake Trinan back. I would love to see another frontline starter, left-hander, maybe a Blake Snell, maybe a Max Fried. I really like Corbin Burns, but I don't know if we need another right-hander. So that's what I would spend $600 million on. Back into the bullpen guy, another frontline starter, and bring Teo back.
Oh, I love that because I didn't want to spoil it before asking the question, but I completely agree with everything you just said because I'm not a Soto person. Like I mean, look, he's one of the great bats of our time, but at the same time, it's like you're right about the defensive liability. I feel like we have a decent amount of left-handed bats in there already, but as far as like Teo goes, it's like he's a big time player. He's clutch. He's postseason clutch. You need that chemistry. It's like it's not just about like you need the people to perform the regular season to get there, of course, but you also need the Kikes, right? You need the Tommy Edmonds and you need the Teos. You need the guys that have the big hit when it really matters. Teo is that guy, and He plays with a lot of heart. He loves this team. He loves the opportunity that the Dodgers gave him. You could see that in his comments during the parade and the event afterwards, how emotional he got when he was talking about what the fans, like, the way they responded to him, what that meant to him. And there's something, it's intangible, but there's something to that in a team, right? And there's something to, we were talking about it before in terms of how they played for each other, right? And so that's something you can't discount either. But I agree with you. I think the Soto price tag is too expensive anyways. Now looking forward to like the pitching side of things, like as far as Walker Buehler, Jack Flaherty, like I personally would absolutely love it if they keep Buehler. I think Flaherty would have to sign a team-friendly deal for me to get behind that. But what do you think their chances are of keeping either of those two?
Well, I think a lot of it, I don't think Flaherty's coming back. I think a lot of it with Buehler is that Buehler's probably going to want either a 1-year deal where he can bet on himself and then parlay that into something more substantial. I think coming off 2 Tommy John surgeries is going to be difficult for Buehler to get like a multi-year deal right now. I mean, you figure that they didn't extend him the qualifying offer, right? So that's about $21.5 million. They did not extend it to him. They did extend it to Teo. Obviously, he declined it, which he should. But Walker, I don't think is going to get a deal more than a 1-year, $21 million type of thing. I think that Walker will probably get like a 1-year, $15-16 million deal, perhaps with some incentives, or at the very high end, maybe he gets like 19-20, but it's not going to be, 3 years. It's not going to be Kikuchi money, right? It's not going to be $21 million for 3 years that the Angels just gave you, say, Kikuchi. I think it's going to be like, let's see what Walker can do in a full season, coming off an unbelievable postseason, of course, where he had the outstretched arms and he's like, I'm a problem now. Like, I didn't go anywhere. Here I am. And you love that confidence, Walker. But I think what's going to happen is let's see what he can do over the course of 162 and next postseason, and then parlay that into a multi-year deal with the numbers that he's going to be more satisfied with. I know he wants to come back to LA. Who doesn't want to come back to LA? Like, they just won the World Series, right? He's comfortable
and
here.
They're built
he was
for
drafted
success.
by this team. Like they're gonna compete every single year. So I think he comes, if he does come back, it's a 1-year, $16 million situation. But I would not be shocked if Walker went someplace else for a year and then perhaps revisits a multi-year deal at a lower AAV after that.
Hey, Italian food lovers. This holiday season, come sample our brand new lunch specials in our coastal Carlsbad location. Any day of the week, choose between either a pasta of your choice or an Italian sandwich, combined with either our famous Italian salad with garlic bread or a slice of pizza with super salad, along with a drink, all between just $7.99 to $9.99. That's right, a hearty lunch at an unbeatable price. Having a holiday party? We offer catering services for corporate events, holiday parties, and even weddings. We can help you make your special event a memorable one with our delicious food. So visit us at 7110 Avenida Encinas, Suite 103 in Carlsbad, or check us out online at primopizzapasta.com. That's primopizzapasta.com. Bring the taste of Italy to your next event.
Break my heart, but I do agree with you. I think that is a realistic outcome here. I mean, I literally made that image you're talking about with him with the arms up. That's literally my phone screensaver now. So, anyways, but as far as like the pitching staff, though, I mean, like looking ahead to 2025, like. I mean, is it, if reasonably healthy, is it exaggeration to say that this team appears to be better on paper than the team in 2024 when you take into account, assuming Ohtani pitches, which it appears he will at some point, and if Glass now is reasonably healthy and there's no other catastrophic like season end, like Yamamoto getting a season-ending injury, like if they're reasonably healthy, is exaggeration to say that the team appears on paper to be somewhat better in 2025, or is that just speculation?
I think it depends on. I think it depends on when Shohei is ready. Obviously, with the subluxation of that shoulder, he's not going to be ready for opening day, but that's okay. I mean, he's still going to be ready to hit. He's just not going to be ready.
Just
to
not
pitch.
the pitch.
Right. So I think that's fine. It depends on what happened. If it's me, I get a frontline starter, another left-hander in that starting rotation. And then you have Tyler Glasnow, who is set to be good to go, ready for spring training. And then you have Yamamoto, of course. Then you have another frontline starter. You have Tony Gonsolin coming back, who's healthy. And then if it's me, I put Dustin May in the bullpen. I think Dustin May's stuff plays better in the pen than it does in the starting rotation. He's not going to be ready. I mean, he's still not ready to pitch, right? So I think when he is ready to come back, you put him in the bullpen. So I still think as it sits right now, and this was my whole problem coming into 2024, is we just did not have enough starting pitching. I mean,
I agree.
You think about the day before Bobby Miller got hurt, Gavin Stone got hurt. I mean, we're talking about those guys in our postseason starting rotation. I'm like, no, that's not good. Like that's not that they're not going to be guys that can really compete at this level. They're just not ready yet. And again, because of necessity, because of injury, they got brought up to the big leagues way too soon. But I think if you let's just assume everyone's healthy, right? That we know are healthy right now. Assume Yamamoto's good for opening day. Assume Glasnow's good for opening day. Gonsolin's good for opening day. Shohei's coming back, soon, hopefully. And then you get a frontline starter. I think you'll be fine. Now, who knows where Roki Sasaki lands? Do I want Roki Sasaki for $12 million as far as the international pool is concerned? Yeah, because he comes at a good price. But it's going to be interesting. I had a conversation the other day with Mark Pryor, Dodgers pitching coach, about that whole 6-man rotation. If you get 3 Japanese pitchers in there, you're probably guaranteeing yourself a 6-man rotation. That's not always the best thing in the world because of off days and just stuff happens. So we need a frontline starter, and I think that person needs to be a left-hander.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree with that. I mean, in 2024, the Dodgers placed, I think it's 12 starting pitchers on the injured list at some point or another. And Ken Rosenthal, he recently wrote in an article that, the Dodgers can't blame awful run of starting pitching injuries solely on misfortune, was one of the lines in his article. And basically the point being that, the Dodgers, every team has injuries, and you made that point earlier, but the Dodgers have had a unique number of starting pitching injuries at really bad times in the last few years that I'm going to be honest, I thought was going to derail the 2024 postseason run too. Like, I thought they could maybe withstand Glasnow. I thought when Stone went down, I texted one of my buddies who's a longtime Dodger. I was like, I don't think that Stone and Glasnow out is good at all for our postseason chances. I think that we could be one and done again. But at the same time, they obviously responded and overcame that. But what I'm talking about is I don't think they can just blame it on injuries happen. I think the Dodgers have had a disproportionate number of starting pitching injuries. And I think Mark Pryor, I can't remember who he was talking to, but in an interview, he recently kind of acknowledged that they were looking into this and that they were going to be reevaluating over the winter if it's something and the way that they develop pitchers that's contributing to all these untimely injuries. May, Gonsolin, Buehler, Kershaw, everybody was going down at some point last year. And what do you make of this notion that the Dodgers are that there's a systemic issue in terms of the way that they approach and develop pitchers that's contributing to these injuries? Do you think that it is just purely bad luck, or do you think that some of these other factors, like people are talking pitch clock or speculating other factors, are contributing to the way the Dodgers are developing pitchers or ending in injuries?
I don't think it's a systematic issue within the Dodgers solely. I think it's a systematic issue league-wide. I think it's a systematic issue where you're having kids that are 13, 14, 15 years old throw 100 miles an hour as hard as they can, as fast as they can, when their body hasn't even built into itself yet. Kids are trying to do stuff that the body is just not meant to do. I do not think it is a pitch clock issue. I think it is a velocity issue and trying to throw every single pitch at max effort to prove that you can do so. Everybody wants to throw 100 miles an hour right now. But if you're a 14-year-old kid that is a boy that's not grown into his own body yet, that's not what the body is meant to do. That's not how your body is physically meant to be. And I think that's the problem of kids coming up. And also, I think it's systematic of kids being brought up to the big league level, whether it's because of a contractual situation or teams can save money on that person or out of necessity or whatever, they're coming up too quickly. So I think that's part of it too. I don't think it's one thing that's causing all of these issues, but look at the Braves. I mean, they were decimated by injury. The Baltimore Orioles were decimated by injury. They had several of their guys go out this year with Tommy John, and they still made it to the postseason. They didn't get deep into the postseason, but they still had, nobody feels sorry for the Braves, and they lost Spencer Strider. You look at it, it's a league-wide issue. And I had this very conversation with Mark Pryor a week and change ago on Dodgers territory. And he did say that they are looking into it. They're having conversations, of course, with the strength and conditioning coaches and the training staff, all their minor league folks, just to see what's going on. But it's certainly not just a Dodgers issue. It is a league-wide issue. I mean, there's guys that are on their second Tommy John surgery, like the Walker Buehlers of the world and those types of things. So, but Walker had Tommy John before he even became a Dodger. So it's something that's happening at the high school level. It's something that's happening at the college level. And I don't think it's the pitch clock. I think it's velocity. And I think it's because guys aren't going deep into games anymore. They're throwing 4 or 5 innings as a starter, and you're lucky if you get 5 innings. And then it trickles down to the bullpen. So the game itself, the way that it's played is shifting. And I think there's a variety of factors of why there's so many injuries.
Well, I'd agree with that, but I would also say, like, I don't know what the answer is, though, right? Because if you have these, 14-year-olds who are being said, hey, throw 100 miles an hour if you want to make the big leagues. But like, how do you change that incentive structure? Because it's like, well, if you have one kid who can throw 100 and he's 14, another kid who's like, oh, he has great movement, but he can only throw like 95, only 95. But my point is like, scouts are still going to be scouts and do their jobs and say, hey, we want the kid with velocity. So, I mean, how do you change that incentive structure? Is there a way without like, the MLB the higher up stepping in?
I think that's how you do it. I think Major League Baseball has to step in. I think the players union has to step in. I think the union has to get involved and say, and now there's an actual union for the minor leagues too, which is helpful.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's part of the issue. I think, adults like parents need to step in and say, listen, I'm not going to have my kid play year-round travel ball. Like, let your kids play multiple sports. You can talk to any big league athlete, any big league player, whether it's a position player or a pitcher. Nobody thinks that kids should be in travel ball all year round. Like, let your kids be a football player. Let them play basketball. Let them run track. Let them play soccer. You don't have to be on every single travel team, every single tournament team. And I think, what the Major League Baseball Players Union is doing right now is they're actually starting up a company within the union called Players Way. And it's the youth development arm. And full disclosure, just to be completely transparent, my husband is on this committee called the Players Way, and they're trying to make sure that the youth space is taught and coached the right way, so these kids are not blowing out their arms when they're 13, 14 years old, that you're not going to all these travel tournaments just because the travel companies are making $1 bazillion on the parents. They're all taught by former major leaguers that have legitimately been on a major league field, not somebody that's like a hitting guru on Instagram, that thinks that they're a hitting guru. So there's a lot of factors, I think, that go into the injuries, but we can really see it, with a broad stroke across all 30 teams, that it's definitely an issue, and it has to be addressed. But I think it needs to be addressed at the youth level first, because it's just trickling up to by the time these guys get to the bigs.
I feel like it takes some time, right, before information about these injuries and why they're happening translates into action, right? And we saw that with the NFL with concussions, and it took a little while for the information out there in the movie Concussion with, I think, Will Smith. With that taking some time to translate into, okay, we're going to actually make systematic changes. And I have my own set of problems with the NFL and how they've approached that, but that's not the point. The point is like,
it's a matter of you have to prioritize safety over profit. And it's very difficult for leagues to do that. It's a business, right? Let's be honest, Major League Baseball is a business, and they're in a business they are a for-profit business to make money. And as much as the NFL is supposed to be a not-for-profit, that's BS, obviously. So, it's a business, but you have to prioritize player safety first. And until we can do that, we're going to continue to have these issues.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I do want to give us some space to talk a little bit about the foundation. So you have, so a lot of people know about the reporter Alanna Rizzo and like the contributions to baseball journalism, but a lot of people don't know that you have this whole other side to you, this whole other heart to you, which is the foundation. And you started, I think was it 2010, this foundation?
Actually, I started the foundation officially in 2019, but it stemmed from the first dog I adopted. I adopted my first dog in 2009, and his name was Guidry. I named him after Ron Guidry of the New York Yankees. He's a left-handed pitcher, Louisiana Lightning type of thing. And I just, my dad was a Yankee fan. I grew up in Colorado. We didn't have Major League Baseball until 1993. So I kind of grew up a Yankee fan. I mean, a very casual Yankee fan. And so I named him Guidry, and that just kind of opened up my eyes to the need for adoption and rescue. There are hundreds of thousands of dogs and cats across our nation that get euthanized on a yearly basis just based on overcrowded shelters. There's a massive backyard breeding problem. There's a massive problem of abandonment and surrender and neglect. So I adopted Guidry when he was 4 months old. And then when I moved to LA in 2014, I just really wanted to leave LA better than I found it. All the huge cities, LA, New York, Chicago, Boston, Dallas, Miami, you name it, in addition to smaller cities and counties have a massive, massive overpopulation of their shelter problem. So
Yeah.
I officially established it July of 2019. So it's 5 years old, and the mission is to get dogs off of the streets and out of high kill shelters.
Yeah. I think people like have a lot of people like know that there's that, dogs in shelters often don't fare very well, but tell us a little bit about like, when you adopted Guidry, like you obviously learned some more information about what was going on at these shelters, the overcrowding issue. What were like some of the things that like drove you from like, oh, this is like something that I feel strongly about and like, my dog, but you just translated that into like using that as a platform to benefit like people and dogs all over the place. Like what was it that kind of started that vision of like, hey, this could be more than just like me and my story?
Well, for me, I just saw the need for it in Los Angeles. I mean, there's so many dogs that get abandoned and just surrendered for no reason. Oh, I'm having a baby. Oh, I'm moving. Oh, it's getting big. Oh, I adopted a dog in COVID and now I'm going back to work and I don't want to deal with it anymore. Dogs are very misrepresented. They're very misunderstood. Pit bulls are actually a wonderful breed. It's not the breed, it's the owner. If they,
absolutely.
they're based on, they do what their owner tells them to do. And you have a lot of people that mistreat them and train them to do things that aren't savory. But I can tell you that rescue dogs know that they've been rescued and they have such a great appreciation of being saved. They are some of the sweetest dogs in the world. They're not broken dogs. They just need a home. And by the way, you can literally rescue every single type of dog out there. If you want a golden doodle, you can rescue a golden doodle. If you want a cavapoo, you can rescue a cavapoo. There is no such thing, by the way, as a hypoallergenic dog. There are dogs that shed less. Yes. But there's no such thing as a 100% hypoallergenic dog. In fact, the guy that actually started this whole doodle craze regrets starting this mess because now people think that that everyone wants a doodle, right? And they're gorgeous. They're super sweet dogs. But I can tell you, there are so many doodles up for adoption. There are purebred doodles in shelters. It just takes a little bit of time for you to do the research. I adopted my current dog, Bentley, from a sanctuary. And I say that word very, very loosely in Bakersfield, California. They were basically just, 12, 15 dogs up there in cages. And she lived in a cage for 4 years. We actually joke and call her Queen No Tifa because she has no teeth because she just ate rocks and whatever was there. But she's the sweetest dog in the world and she's part pit. So there's a breed of dog for every family. Do your research. If you're an active dog, don't get a bulldog. If you're a guy that loves to hike and go outdoors, get a border collie, get a husky, get a dog that likes to be active, get a pointer. If your activity level is low, get a Shih Tzu. There's a breed for every family and every need, but you can also adopt every breed too. So it's just a passion project for me. And we've saved and helped in some capacity in the last 5 years over 500 dogs, and we're 100% donation based. So we rely on our community to help us, and hopefully we can save as many as possible. Unfortunately, there's always going to be more supply than demand to adopt. So it's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding as well.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And for people to understand, like, what is it that the work of the foundation, so you guys like connect people, you connect dogs that need homes with people who can take them. But like, kind of what is it that you guys do that's kind of like from your vision and your standpoint, like, I guess unique and kind of elevating the care and quality of protection for these dogs above like maybe any other organization? Like, what is it that you guys do that's really like unique and powerful for these dogs?
The biggest thing that we need is donations and fosters. We cannot pull dogs out of shelters and get them off the street if we don't have any place for them to go. But I think what's unique about us is we don't physically pull the dogs and house them. What we do is I do all of the fundraising to pay for all of the medical. I'll just give you a quick example. Back at the end of April, we found a dog that was dumped overnight in a yard in South Los Angeles, so South LA. And we picked up the dog off the street, which is not something that we normally do, but we weren't just going to turn our back and let the dog die. We got the dog to a vet appointment. Very, very, very long story short. We found out she was pregnant. So obviously she cannot be spayed because that would have aborted all of the puppies. And that's not something we were willing to do. So the last minute we found a foster. And when I tell you this is a long story short, she had 7 puppies on May 14th. And today, November 26th, the last of the 7 is finally going to her forever home. I named him after the Big Bang Theory. So it was Sheldon, Leonard, Priya, Beverly, Amy, Penny, and I'm missing one. And they all got adopted, and the mom got adopted too. And now the mom is living her best life in Oregon. So, but we paid for all of that. And unfortunately, one stray dog, this is what happens when you don't spay and neuter your animals. One stray dog cost us $25,000 because it was all of the medical, all of the spay, all of the neuter. And then unfortunately, the mom got really sick because she got into something. But that's what we do. We raise money to pay for the medical, transportation fees, foster supplies, microchips, vaccinations, all of the things to get the dogs off the street, out of the shelter, healthy, happy, and into forever homes.
Hey, Italian food lovers. This holiday season, come sample our brand new lunch specials in our coastal Carlsbad location. Any day of the week, choose between either a pasta of your choice or an Italian sandwich, combined with either our famous Italian salad with garlic bread or a slice of pizza with super salad, along with a drink, all between just $7.99 to $9.99. That's right, a hearty lunch at an unbeatable price. Having a holiday party? We offer catering services for corporate events, holiday parties, and even weddings. We can help you make your special event a memorable one with our delicious food. So visit us at 7110 Avenida Encinas, Suite 103 in Carlsbad, or check us out online at primopizzapasta.com. That's primopizzapasta.com. Bring the taste of Italy to your next event.
I love that. I love that. And I like that you mentioned like too, that there is a price to this, right? Like this isn't an easy undertaking. I mean, dogs are awesome, but like, you don't just get one. Like you think about it, you make sure that's right for you, right for the dog, right for your home, right for your situation. And that you can not just take care of the dog, but physically, feed it and whatever, but that also like mentally just meeting its needs and that sort of thing. And I mean, I think about like, it's, I mean, to some extent it's like a relationship with a person, right? It's not just on your best day, it's on your worst day, right? And there's going to be times where it's going to test your patience, your humility. Like, I mean, it's not all glamorous and like cutesy Instagram photos. I mean, taking care of a dog is gnarly work sometimes. And
you're taking care of a life.
Yeah, you are.
You're taking care of a life.
To be treated.
You're responsible for keeping them alive.
Yeah, exactly.
It's highly rewarding, though. It's very rewarding, and I highly encourage people to foster and adopt.
It is, and I don't regret it myself. But and yeah, we what's your website, by the way? For is it for just so people know where to donate?
Yeah, thanks. It's guidrysguardian.org. So that's GUIDRYS guardian.org. You can check out the dogs that we have available there, but also just what we are, who we are, what we stand for, and obviously donations can be made there as well.
Awesome. And then as we close, and I know you only have a few more minutes, I want to be careful with your time, but I just want to ask you, like, so you've been like had your hand in like a lot of different areas of journalism, and you've been on MLB Network, you've been on Spectrum SportsNet LA, you've had different podcasts, but as far as like your own future and like kind of what you want to achieve in the world of journalism, I guess, like what's next for you? You've checked a lot off the list. Like, what's like the long-term kind of like legacy, like that you want to carve out, like in terms of this is what, like when people think about Alanna Rizzo, like, obviously they think of the things you've already done, but also like looking forward, like, is there a big milestone, like in the journalism world, whether it's like with the Dodgers, like covering the Dodgers in some capacity or something else, like what is it next for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. As most people know, High Heat ended this year. So it was on the air for quite some time. I was with Chris Russo for the last 4 seasons, but the show isn't coming back. But that does not mean that, he and I are done in any capacity. We may not be on the show together anymore, but Chris will still have a few opportunities here and there on Major League Baseball Network because his contract doesn't run out until the end of the year. But obviously he's still on Sirius XM and he's obviously on ESPN's First Take. So you're not getting rid of the Mad Dog yet. However, for me, I still definitely, I'm still very much planning on being on your television sets covering baseball. I'm working on a couple of things now with a couple of different networks. So we're hoping that happens soon, although everyone's kind of on to their next sport right now. So networks aren't at the forefront of thinking about baseball at the moment, but we're working on a couple of things there. And I also would really like to just kind of tell my story. as far as like public speaking and motivational speaking too. I didn't go back to school and get into journalism until I was 28 years old. I kind of, took a
Oh, wow.
took a flyer on myself, if you will, and I bet on myself. And I used to be in sales and marketing. I have a bachelor's degree in international business, and I was in marketing and hospitality in the beverage industry for about 5 years. And I was just bored out of my mind. And I've always been a huge sports fan. So I went back to school. I got a master's in journalism and, started from the bottom, Wichita Falls, Texas, which was market 142 out of 200. And worked my way up from there. And I know that I've had an amazing and blessed career, but I know that I don't want to be done. I'm not done. So more to come. And hopefully I'll start announcing that type of stuff after the first of the year. But looking forward to definitely still covering the best sport in the world and doing some other things in addition to always continuing the foundation work.
I love that, because you were saying that, you got back into journalism when you're, I think you said 28, but I was thinking like, it's interesting because you said, that was kind of like later on. And that's true. Normally people, go to journalism school and they're starting from, they kind of know what they want going into college even, or at least after that. And like, for me, I thought I was like, I got into journalism when I was 20, writing for the school newspaper at UCLA is when I found out that I loved it. But like, it's interesting because like you said that, you did try other industries, right? You tried kind of going another route and you kind of just realized that wasn't true to you. And, we do a lot of entrepreneurship interviews on this show. And I'm just thinking like, if people are listening, like, I guess, there's always like two ways in life, right? Like you kind of like go the route and go through the motions, or you can kind of pursue that dream that you always kind of knew it was there, but you're like, I don't know, like it seems impossible. And like, but you kind of regret it if you don't do it, right? If as you grow older, you're like, oh, what could have been? But you obviously made that choice, you made the decision, you pulled the trigger, and you're obviously better off for it. So it's like, I guess, like what kind of advice do you give to people who kind of like aren't sure of themselves in that situation, like people who like maybe it's journalism, maybe they want to pursue a career in journalism, but they're not sure if the ship has sailed or if they don't have the connections, can't get into it. Like, what would you say is like kind of the key to like personal success and growth in that area?
I think the biggest thing you have to do is bet on yourself. I mean, I completely quit, I quit my job. I went back to school. I moved, left Colorado. I went to Texas, Wichita Falls, Texas. Like I said, I was making $15,800 a year, but it's not forever. And I think you have to follow your passion. I think if you go into something that you just think you should go into because that's what society tells you to do, then you're going to be really unfulfilled. And I think if you go into something that you love, it never feels like work. This has never felt like work. It always has felt like a very fulfilling career. But I think you have to be prepared if you want to do anything, to work hard, always be more prepared than you think you need to be. Be cognizant of the preparation and not only the sacrifice. I think a lot of people want to do what we do, but not many people realize the billion steps it takes. Like everybody wants to be the Los Angeles Dodgers sideline reporter, right? Of course. Yeah. It's a great job, but not everyone understood the 21 million steps, the million steps I took to get to that point. It wasn't an easy decision to leave, but I needed some work-life balance in my life at this point in my life. So, it's never too late. Like I said, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was growing up. I wasn't one of those girls that like stood in the mirror with the microphone and like, did play-by-play. But I always knew I loved sports, and I went back to school at 28 and, I've had a career of over 2 decades in this. So, it's been incredibly fulfilling, but it's also been a lot of work. But bet on yourself and you can't go wrong.
Did you subscribe yet? If you like our content, it's the easiest way to support the pod. Hit the subscribe button on the bottom right and keep it classy.
I love that. That's the attitude of like unwavering self-belief at all times. And it's obviously paid off. And I do want to ask, like, as far as like sports journalism goes, and as we wrap up, just like, there's kind of a sense I got from working. I've worked as a few years as a news reporter before starting this show, but like I got the sense that kind of this overwhelming like sense of doom, even talking to like older like reporters, like, I mean, older than me, like just the sense of like, well, you can go into this industry, good luck, but it's on its way out. Like, and, I was working more in print, although I had a short stint in television too, but I was working more in print, and I kind of got the sense like, it's kind of on its way out and it's all doom and gloom. And the corporatization of media, just like kind of the conglomeration of, like all the old small little subsidiaries going out of business, and it's just all consolidated to the Washington Post and Amazon owning everything, right? I'm being hyperbolic, right? But just this idea that like, kind of the old way is dying out, and like it's a tough profession, but I want to get your sense, like there is still great sports journalism being done out there, and I'm not asking for your opinion on these specific people, but in terms of like, I think there's some good reporting done for The Athletic, and I'm not going to name names there, but as far as the sort of corporatization of sports media and kind of how that looks for journalists who are trying to get in the field. But then you have this other factor, which is kind of the underground world of journalism, Barstool Sports and those guys, and kind of the journalism that they do, if you want to call it that. But I just want to ask you, like, because there's some criticism of that too, right? Where it's like, okay, you kind of like dumb down the product a bit, and it kind of like you get the Barstool guys like are having that dude who like grabbed Mookie's arm on their show. Like you kind of get the dumbing down of like sports media to some extent with that, although it is also this more like fan, I guess, transparent, like honest take on stuff, but that maybe you don't get the higher levels. So what do you think is like, where do you think like the future of this thing goes? Like, do you think that sports media is kind of evolving that direction where it kind of becomes more this like independent journalism, like people doing what we're doing right now kind of thing? Or do you think that there's still enough great journalism being done by kind of the major outlets like Athletic, ESPN, whatever? Like, do you think that that is still kind of going to carry the standard going forward? Or how do you see this thing, like the profession evolving, I guess?
I think people surround themselves with like-minded people. So if you have that journalistic integrity and you are a certain way in the way that you go about things, you're going to seek out the same type of information coming to you. Like if you're used to, I think the problem with today and in our industry is I think people care so much about being first instead of being correct and being accurate and having sources. And that's a problem. That's a problem because then they can always retract. Oh, I'm sorry. My mistake type of situation. I think our industry is definitely, it's definitely changing. And there is definitely a trend now more towards the digital space, the streaming space, the podcast space. I mean, long gone are the days of getting a 5, 6, 7, 10-minute sports segment in a local news station. That's just not there. Yeah. Nobody needs to wait until the 5, 6, 10 o'clock news to find out what happened. Everybody knows what happened instantaneously. Yeah. So that is an ever-changing landscape of our industry. But I do always think there is a need and a want and a desire for good journalism and telling good stories and making sure that you're correct and establishing relationships and building relationships. I mean, I'm certainly not going to knock Barstool. I mean, they're incredibly successful. There's obviously a market for what they're putting out there. Is that necessarily my cup of tea? No. But Dave Portnoy has done an unbelievable job of creating this unbelievable brand, and that type of demand is there, obviously, or else he wouldn't be successful. And by the way, I'm a big Portnoy fan now because he adopted famous Miss Peaches, and he's given a really good name to rescue with pit bulls. So for that, I'm incredibly grateful. We don't always have to agree on everything, but I can certainly agree on that. To answer your question, I think there's a need and a desire for every type of platform out there. But that doesn't mean you need to change who you are to fit in with that because you think that's the direction the industry is going. I think the one thing that's important is stay true to yourself. Always be authentic. Don't try to be anybody else. Don't try to have somebody else's voice because people will see right through that. I would be a disaster on Barstool, but I think I'm still a really good journalist. And I think there's a place for what I have to offer. So I think, I think there's something for everybody, but stay true and authentic to yourself and you'll continue to find your path. But to say that the industry is changing is an understatement.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's not, I referenced I think the Austin, whatever his face was, the guy who grabbed the arm, and they wrote the whole story on that and had him in their studio. Like, okay, like obviously, and Barstool does do some great work. I was just kind of using that as an example to say, like, I'm not saying it's like a bastardization of journalism. I'm saying that it's more of like, I think that there's still more of that independent kind of like fan level journalism now than there used to be, obviously with the advent of platforms like X and Blue Sky and stuff. So, but it is changing, that's for sure. But just last question as we let you go.
I think everybody also wants their 5 minutes. Now it's like 5 minutes of famous. The news cycle is so quick now. It's like, that saying that, a friend's mom told her a long time ago, she's also a journalist, is that, yesterday's newspaper wraps today's fish. Like you're constantly like, it's constantly changing and people have no attention span anymore. And there's so much out there to consume that people know, you're constantly being inundated with things. So stuff doesn't last. Cycle doesn't last as long as it used to.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. Even if you don't have ADHD like I do, it's overwhelming. Like the information is coming at us from every different stream, right? It's just like all over the place, and having to delineate that and say like, okay, this is what I'm going to listen to. That's like a choice that we're all making now, where it used to be like, there weren't as many choices. So I love that take. And just as we let you go, any predictions for 2025 baseball season? Anything like as far as it could be like, who you think's going to win it all, or it could also just be like, here's a player on the Dodgers I think is going to do this, or like here's the starting rotation this is going to happen. Like, Any predictions?
All right. I'm so bad at this. I'm gonna let me think.
Yeah, you can go ahead, take us
I
in.
think here's something just based on some offseason spending. I don't think they're going to go deep into the postseason, but I think the Angels finally make the postseason.
Okay,
I will say that.
Wait, who did they sign yesterday? I can't remember. I'm blanking.
Well, they had Yusei Kikuchi, 3 years, $63 million. They've signed Travis d'Arnaud. They've signed Kyle Hendricks. They've signed Jorge Solid. They've made like 5 offseason signings. So maybe they're taking the picture or a page out of the Kansas City Royals book and have some offseason spending and maybe actually compete. So I will say I think the Angels make the postseason. I pray that Mike Trout is healthy. I think they should get rid of the Anthony Rendon contract somehow. And I mean, yeah, so that's my prediction, but I'm terrible at that, just so everybody knows.
We all are. I mean, I didn't predict the Dodgers. Like, as I said, I was doubting them going to that Padres series, and I was glad to be proven wrong. So sometimes it's good to be proven wrong, right? It's like,
Absolutely.
You win either way. If you're right or if you're wrong, like you can kind of like frame it as, well, I'm glad I was wrong, or I was right all along, but you're not happy with yourself. But anyways, Alanna, really appreciate you coming on today. This is honestly a dream come true for me, and just watching you growing up and just like following your journalism, being able to do this interview today. Really appreciate your time. This means a lot, and you're an inspiration to not just me, but thousands of other journalists out there. So thank you for the work you do. And I really mean that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to you, and thanks for having me, and Godspeed being a Dodgers fan in San Diego. Good luck.
Oh yeah. It's, you have no idea. Well, maybe you do, but all right. Thank you guys. And thanks Rob. And thank you, Alanna. And we're looking forward to interviewing you hopefully after another World Series win in 2025.
I would love that.
All right. Thanks. That's a wrap, guys.
This has been another recorded episode of Stay Classy Podcast with your host, Steve Wire. Thanks so much for tuning in. And as always, you can find all of our content at our website at stayclassypod.com. And thanks to our production sponsor and partner, MaxLux Media. You can find them at maxluxmedia.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Every subscription helps and goes a long way towards ensuring that we can continue to produce content for viewers like yourself. Thanks so much. Stay classy.